So let's get going. Say I've got 3 that I perhaps want to try and get through. This is a really nice plain simple one. Actually, what I've done with the samples, I've tried to use each of the designs separately. So this card is using this little die here. So again, this is so useful. You have the reverse image as well, but what I've done, I've just used this die just for this card, and you can see that that in itself, as simple as this looks, can create something really effective. This card is created using this die, which is this greyish one here, the greyish one and the green, which is the reverse image. So that gives us another effect. And I have something sort of quite flamboyant for me actually using these designs here. So let's put that to one side and leave them there. So I'm going to start off with this greyish one here. Let's leave that there. Okay, so what I've done already, I've already die cut myself these strips, and just to get going with these, I think it's worth just cutting them in the colours that you like, even if you don't use them. Perhaps just stick them back in the envelope. But I find this sort of thing, just by die cutting them and having them pile up on your desk around you, and then perhaps putting them onto a piece of card to be able to move them out the way and whatever, that's where your ideas come. So I'm going to do a slight variation on this card, mainly because of what I've just said. I created this card and I wanted to create the reverse, because you can see I've cut myself a grey frame, and in doing that I had a spare piece of grey card. So what I was going to do, put the grey card on there, and then I was just going to use the white strips against that grey background, because I thought that that would be, using the same idea as here, I thought that that would be really striking against the grey card, and just highlighting these white strips just with the odd either glitter piece of card or a piece of yellow card. And I think just by highlighting, just put 1 or 2 different strips in, I think that makes that look really classy. And then what you can do, just put your sentiment on, and that is just really, really simple. To me, that is just perfect. And what I would do, I would stick those down and I would trim them off so we have exactly the same length. So that in itself, I thought looked stunning against the grey background. But also what I thought, I put all of these onto another piece of card that I cut, and I was just putting this on just as a carrier, just so as I could move all of these strips, which I'd sort of arranged in a way that sort of was pleasing to my eye. I arranged them on here, and I was just moving them about like this, obviously, because it was easier. But looking at it, I thought perhaps I could just use them as they are and put that against the white background. Now, I wouldn't normally say put a small white die cut against a white background, but I think in this case it really works. And what I was thinking this time round, instead of sticking these down individually while you're all watching me, which would be quite laborious and quite take quite a long time, I was actually going to use the sentiment, which I've mounted onto foam strips, so I can actually attach them all at once, all in one go. So I think that is actually what I might do. So really, with this design, you've got 3 cards for the price of 1, to be honest. So I think this is the idea that I'll go with this time. I don't know what you think. It's one of those things that when I prep for these lives, you can get a little bit carried away. You go off on one track and you think, oh, I know what I'll do. I'm pretty clear. on that idea. But then, as I say, you move pieces of paper around and you get caught up and you think, oh no, that will work instead. So I think all I'm doing is just spacing these out. Just, you don't even have to do them evenly, to be honest with you. I sort of want them all at the same level. So I'm just going to get my ruler and just try and get them all at the same level like that. There we are. I won't be too fussy. It doesn't even matter too much if they sit straight, but what I do want them to do is sit within the bounds of this sentiment. So I'm going to perhaps move them in a little bit more. I'm going to bring some of these highlighted ones in, just as little accents in the little group of white ones there. And I think just by adding one or two, I think it just adds a little bit of something. It shows that you've really thought about it. And what I'm going to do with this one is actually cut this one down. Just a bit of interest, so we have that at a different level. And then I can add perhaps a couple of these sparkly ones, or perhaps even just one, I don't know. And I know this looks simple, but do you know what? Sometimes the simplest things can be the best. And I think what I might do is just leave it like that. Now, obviously, if you wasn't watching me, what I would do, I would spend the time gluing all of these down individually. And possibly what I will do afterwards, I'll just put a dab of glue on the top. But you don't want to watch me doing that. So I'm just going to make sure that these are all pushed in, so I can secure those down all at once with a sentiment. There we are. There we are. Oh, it's good when a plan comes. Good when a plan works, isn't it? I was hoping that would work like that. And actually, even not sticking those down, it gives those pieces a bit of movement, which is actually quite interesting. Now, I think just to finish this off, I don't know about you, I don't know what you think. I think that actually works if I put a frame around that, because it means that those the white pieces aren't quite as lost. So I think what I might do while I'm here, just to finish that off, I will actually add that frame. Oh. So I started off with one idea and then came up with this idea. And do you know, this actually most of this came about just because of the scraps and the little incidental pieces I had left sitting on my desk, creating something else. So it just goes to show that it's worth keeping all these little bits. I mean, I know you all do anyway. We never like to throw anything away, do we? But it's quite handy just to have them sitting there, and I think that looks really smart. And then what I can do at a later date, I can use these pieces, I'm sure, one of each colour. They still look great against that grey background. And I can just perhaps cut a few more strips, another sentiment, and then I've got a third card there. And basically you've got a set of cards. It's really nice to create something of the same theme that all look really different. And these, I think this would look actually really lovely in different colours if there was particular colour schemes that you wanted to go for. Yeah, I think that would work. It's really simple, and it gives you a chance just to die cut lots of these and just have a play. Now, just to let you know, I cut the frame and the backing for that using the nested scallops. Now, Lisa does have a set of rectangles coming onto the show later on. I think they are a slightly different size from what I can gather. They're slightly smaller, so they will work in conjunction with these perfectly. And the sentiments I've used are the banner sentiments and die stamps, and I've stamped these out a couple of times, die cut them, so I have quite a few of these sort of sitting there ready to go. So that's the first card, using just the smallest die. So I thought that was a really lovely thing for you to see. and just shows you the potential of everything that Lisa does design for us. So the next card, this one, is a little bit more involved. And I've used this particular vase from the Urn, Jug and Vase set, but there are a good couple of other sets that have vases and other vessels that you can use. There are also larger vases that you can use, so take this as just an idea, just as a little taster to encourage you, you know, and give you an idea of how to start. Obviously the background here is created with the nested stitched and bubble squares. Actually, I'm not sure, I didn't check if this one was in stock or not. Everything else has been in stock, is in stock on Lisa's website. And I'm also using the scripted sentiments. It's the little things, purely because I like the stamped look on there, but you can use any sentiment that would fit onto this card. So I have my layers, again die cut with the bubble stitch and squares. I've actually gutted this lower lever here, as you can see, and this is what this front piece of card is going to be cut from, and that just is a really good economic way to use your card. You would only be covering this over because this glittered layer, or the burgundy layer that we have here, is larger, so there is not much point in covering over a perfectly good card. You might as well take that square out of there. We have the dies to be able to do that, nest those up, and you'd never know. So that's a really economical way to use your cardstock. Now this time we'll be using the Ultimate, so it actually gets inky this time round. I should do a different colourway this time. Let's just move that to the side. Now the stencils I've chosen to use this time are the layering floral doilies. They come with 4 stencils and actually dies as well, so you can create yourself a mandala and create different layers that way. But this time around I'm only using these stencils. Now with the size of the layer that I've chosen from the stitched square, you can see that stencil pretty much fits that size of square perfectly, which is ideal and makes it so much easier to line up the stencil. So I can put that on our peg system there. Now you'll notice from this card what I've actually done. I've actually continued this pattern onto the vase that goes around the background, so that's optional. If you choose to colour coordinate your vase with a background, you needn't do that, but I thought it was just a different idea, so I shall show you how that works as well. And I shall do that secondly, because I do actually want the design to go underneath the vase, because I think that makes that just sits a lot nicer. Now I probably won't use all of these stencils. It comes with 4 stencils, so you can build the pattern as you go, but I don't want too much of the design underneath, because that will sort of detract from the stems that I'll be putting into the vase. I think for my eye that would just be too much. Now I'm going to go for slightly different colours this time, because we have that silvery glittery background. You can actually use any colour with that, that will pick up any of the colours you use, but I think I'll go with the slightly more muted colours this time. I won't go bold with these, because obviously I want the stems to pop from the front, but you need a little bit something in the background. So I shall actually, I'll bring in my brushes here. I did say that I would show you how I store my brushes, didn't I? Maybe I'll do a separate video on that. So let me just try and choose the colour. I think I will go with the painted eggshell on the outside. So the painted eggshell, which is a lovely, soft, sort of bluey grey. And I shall just, let me use a brush so we get around there a lot quicker. So I'm not putting down too much ink at all. I just want this to be subtle in the background. Now the inks that I used in the background of this one were actually the newer inks. And I'll show you the colours that I used. Sorry, I can't remember the names of them. Yeah, it's the Interference inks. And the colours that I used on here were the Pumpkin Spice and the Cherry Bomb. I thought they worked really nicely together. So that they do have that little bit of mica in the background. Now, these being the matte blending inks, they won't have that mica in the background, but again, it's a completely different look. So I'll just stencil this down. Now, I will be using some of the Margarita as well. See, that's so pretty. That's such a pretty colour, isn't it? I really love that. So I was coming with the layer 2, and I'll just use a little bit of the Margarita. Again, I'll just keep it quite light. Yes, I'm using light. I'll just stencil that around. I think I've said in the past that a lot of the inking I do is really, I do go on the paler side as opposed to going quite bold. So when you're watching me at this stage, you can't see a huge amount happening. But when I take that stencil away, that's when you see how pretty that is in the background there. And that is gorgeous. I love them colours. What I'll do now, I shall bring in my vase. That's where the vase is going to sit. And I can come back in with the stencil again. So this is now what enables the design just to work seamlessly onto that vase. And I think because this area of the design won't be in contact with the stems that I'm putting in, I might attempt just to go that little bit darker on the vase, just to add a little bit of difference, I think. And just before I move that, I'm just going to add a little bit of the eucalyptus leaves and just add that into the tips, just on the vase, just to make it look a little bit different. Hopefully that's enough. So I take that away, and then I can come back in with stencil number 2 and the Margarita again. I shall go a little bit darker, and this time I'm only concentrating on the bottom part of the design because that's the area that is going to be on the vase itself. So let's have that a little bit darker on there. Okay, and we pull that away. So there we are, you can see that just a little bit dark and a bit darker. There we are. You can tell I'm not used to going heavy-handed. Let's add a little bit more onto there. There we are. I like that. I'm just going to take that away because the design is sitting underneath. I know where I'll be able to layer that vase back to. I won't use the other 2 layers of the stencils. I mean, it would look pretty, but I think in this case, I don't think it needs it. I think it would just be too much for the design. So I'm just going to move away the Ultimate because that's my stenciling done. I'm going to bring my blending mat in, because what I want to do is just add a little bit of colour using the painted eggshell, just a little bit of colour around the edge of the vase, and that just will make that stand out from the rest of the white card just a little bit more. We can just blend that in. So this already has a completely different feel to this card here. I love these colours, I really do. I was looking forward to using this. I thought I'd save that for you, seeing these colours come together. So there we are. So we have that vase like that. So what we can start doing now is bringing our card back in. And I think that looks lovely against that glitter cardstock, which will, which will take any of the colours. That's from the newest set of glitter card, which is the jewel tones, the volume 1. So I can move that out the way, so we can see that when we put our vase back down there, that sits nicely. I think what I might do is put a bit of a shadow behind this vase, so that will just make that stand out like that. Now there is a little tip actually which I used on this one. You can see that there's a shadow on either side. You don't need to cut 2 of these vases in the darker colour. You cut the one, you can cut that in half, and then just by adding a bit of glue around the outside of the vase, you can just layer that on both sides, and that will give you enough of a shadow. You won't notice that there's a split in that shadow behind, because the top and the bottom of the vase is flush with that behind, but I think that's just enough to make that stand out against the cardstock like that. I thought that was quite a nifty little trick. Now I've die cut already the stems that were going in, and I thought another nice little detail with the berries on the ends are just calling out to be embellished, and I'm glad Helen's here because she'll appreciate the use of sparkles. Helen's notorious for her sparkles in our family, and I know that it will make her eyes light up straight away, but you can see that I've already added some of Lisa's gems onto the ends of these twigs, and I think them sitting in that vase there works really well. We have a space here that is just ideal for a sentiment, so which one should I choose? There's a birthday sentiment on here, so I think I might use that one. And I have a feeling Mum might want this one for her birthday, but it's a little way off, Mum, isn't it? You're going to have a nice collection of cards that you like for me to send to you. Okay, so I'm actually going to put that onto a stamp and ink that up. Obviously you can die cut a sentiment and stick that on as well. There's lots of different ways to actually do that, but I really do just like the simple look. Now this is stamping onto textured cardstock, so I'm hoping that will take. I should have perhaps done that with my stamping platform. Yeah, perfect. There we are. So that's another way to use the cards, and we have, say, 2 cards there, 2 very different looks. Again, and that is using this particular design of the set. Now if you wanted to really go to town, you could cut even more designs, even more of these stems and really fill the vase, then that would sort of, you'd really go to town on that. Equally, you can change the vase that they are sitting in. I quite like that one, that fits really well. But there's so many. There's like the milk urn, which I would equally work just as well. I know these aren't die cut, but they would work sitting on there too, as would all the other stems. If you wanted to mix and match the different stems, if you wanted to put the straight stems in there, that would work also. So I'm just showing you sort of the possibilities, and there are so many variations that you can have amongst them. Now the last card I want to do again is totally different again. Let me move those to one side. Now this card I haven't made up, but I wanted to show you different variations and different combinations on how this would work. So I have myself sorted 3 different card sizes for you. Again, it's using the Modern Berries here, but I'm using this design this time. It's slightly more grass-like, I suppose. The sentiment I'm using is the Sentiment Inset Circle, and that has a coordinating set, which is the Circle Ornamental. This particular set, the Circle Ornamental, is in stock. This one isn't, unfortunately, but I'm sure many of you have that anyway. You can use any sentiment in the centre of this. I just chose that one because that was the idea that I had in my head. Now what I'll do, I shall start with the largest card. So this is the largest card, the same size as the one I've just made, which is an 8x8. And you can see here that I've actually die cut myself. How much? Yeah, I've die cut each one of the dies in different colours. And my thinking was that you can actually use this to create a wreath. You can either create the wreath this way round. You can see that the way that the shapes work, that if you bend them round, you know, they naturally have that flow. So that works like that. And you can put your sentiment in the middle. And I think if you use real bold colours like this, that just on its own works really well. The other way I was thinking, you can actually, I'm just making sure I get the right colours going here, the right shapes. I've cut 2 of the same there. Which way around? So what you can do, you can actually build up the circle this way round by putting all the base of the stems in the centre. And you can follow a pattern like this, or you can make it completely random. And then to cover the workings in the middle, you can put your sentiment in the middle there, and you can just rearrange the fronds around the outside. I thought that was a really nice bold card, but it's not too scary. It still had lots of white in the background, which for me is perfect. I like using colour, but I like using it against white because for some reason I'm not as confident using as much colour, but I like it. I love it when I see other people use colour that way. So that works on a really big card, on the 8x8 card. But if you don't want to send a card that size, there are other ways you can do it onto a smaller card. So this is 5x7. So you can have your sentiment in the middle. Again, you can work the fronds around the outside. I think you'd need to have a little bit more of a play, and you probably don't need to use as many, but I think that does work like that, especially if you're using the person's favourite colour. You can arrange the stems underneath, so this way round it almost reminded me of being like a dream catcher. So you can put your colours in like so, or you can put the sentiment right up in the corner. You can use the certain bend of the stems this way round to actually fit around the sentiment this way. So there we are, and you can just build up the colours like that. I think that's a really nice way of using colour as well. So it works on a 5x7 card really nicely, and again you can scale that down to an A6 card, but also I wondered if it would actually work on a DL card. Now this sentiment does fit onto a DL card if you put that in the centre, and this time round you can actually put in the stems almost like wings. Now you could leave it like that. You can build up the colours and layer them. I do get a little bit knotted. There we are. You can layer them that way too. You can add as many colours as you like. I mean, I really do quite like the peacock colours, the way that they've come together, and layer them like that. And I think if you're using similar colours, you really can sort of go to town and have the designs overlap a lot without sort of, you know, detracting from the design too much. So I think that's a really nice way to use them too. And that sort of design almost reminds me of it almost being butterfly like, with the butterfly wings out to the side. What you can do actually, even just play in, I think when these were first released, I think it might have been Mary, she did actually create it was almost a butterfly card. So perhaps if I put this way round, we have the stems up like that, and then you can have the two lower wings. And I think perhaps if you trim those down a little bit, that really does look like butterfly-esque, especially if you put a smaller sort of sentiment in the middle. This one would be too big, but that, hopefully you can see that is almost butterfly-like. Maybe you would make the top wings just that little stand out a little bit more by putting something a bit bigger on like that. But again, there is so much you can do to play with. So again, that is a completely different look, a lot bolder. And I think what I might do, I might put that back onto the bigger card for you. This one does actually work if you use a strip sentiment as well, not only a circle one. I think if you use a longer sentiment, then it means you can perhaps put a lot more layers on. So let me just layer those up for you. Hopefully you can see the potential in these now. Again, it's not an exhaustive list of what I've created. Once you get them home and you start playing, you'll come up with so many more ideas. Plus the fact you can actually use them to embellish under all of your stencil designs, and use them as accessories, which I think Tony said she's only ever used them for. And again, they are absolutely perfect for that. But I really did want to show you them today, just how sort of stand out and how they work on their own, which I think they do work perfectly well. So I can leave that there. Hopefully I've given you a few ideas today. So if Lisa does get round to showing you them on screen today, as well as the samples that may be on screen with her, hopefully you can bear these ones in mind as well, and that will give you, hopefully it just may sway your decision as to whether you might want them in your stash or not. They are a really useful set, particularly if you like clean and simple cards. I would say they are absolutely ideal for that, as you can see here. Oh, there's a lot to fit in that screen there. I can get those put together. There we are. So hopefully that's been really useful for you today. I actually really enjoyed these. There was a lot more ideas that I could have come up with today, actually, and I think this in particular, you really got an awful lot of variations. You can really go to town on these too. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. Take care.